Hello everyone, my name is Rebecca Kelly and you're listening to the Everywhere We Go podcast. On this week's episode, I sit down with Kizzy. I have known Kizzy for a long time, but COVID has made it difficult for us to keep in touch. When I noticed Kizzy share something about Mother's Day, I reached out to see what was going on. Kizzy tells me that her lovely Mam Ev has been diagnosed with dementia, how her and her sisters had started to notice Ev's normal behaviour change, and how this devastating diagnosis has triggered a range of emotions for the family, including why my mam. At just 35 years of age, Kizzy feels that she has been robbed of her mammy, in a time she should be spoiling her, bringing her off and just enjoying her time with her mammy. Kizzy tells me about the help her mam and dad receive and the later life programme in Kilkenny. I truly want to thank Kizzy for her time this week of all weeks. With Virgin Media launching their Donate for Dementia week, there are currently 64,000 people living with dementia in Ireland. If Kizzy's stories helps just one of those families, we know we have done well. Kizzy, your strength and love knows no bounds. You will be forever in my thoughts and Ev in my prayers. Everywhere we go, people want to know who we are and where we come from. So who are you and where do you come from?
My name is Kizzy and I come from Kilkenny.
Kizzy, it's so lovely to see your face. It's been so long since I've seen you. It's ridiculous.
I know, we miss seeing you guys and being in the office and having the fun and it's strange.
When you started to follow me and seeing me doing the podcast and then you were telling me about your mum. So do you want to tell me about your mum?
So my mum's name is Ev and she's deadly. She's just the best crack. She's always made friends wherever she went. A life and soul at the party, loved a session. She'd be in the middle of everything. Always kind-hearted, generous to people. You know, just one of these people that really, like when I was younger, I used to hate going into town with her because you couldn't get up the high street in 2 hours. She'd be meeting people, talking to them, catching up. She kind of just draws people to her. She's that kind of personality. That's Ev. I'm the youngest of 6, so herself and Daddy were busy. They had 3 close together, a little bit of a gap, had the twins, and then I arrived 10 years later. So the twins refer to me as an accident or a mistake, but I would say I'm the favourite child.
Being the youngest, you would be.
Oh yeah, petted on and spoiled, they would say. But yeah, Dasher, I got all the attention, I suppose. The other 5 were much older than me, so they were kind of half reared when I came along as well. But yeah,
what was it like growing up for the lot of you?
It was fun, but do you know what? The funny thing about it is, the 6 of us were never under the same roof together until 5 years ago. My oldest brother moved out when he was young enough. He moved across to my nanny and granddad lived across the road from our house, and he moved in with them to help take care of them. Nanny had been sick for years. She'd had a number of strokes and whatever. So yeah, the 6 of us had never lived under the one roof. We went away together just 5 years ago. I was 30, my dad was 70, and the twins were 40. So that was the first time we all stayed away somewhere together or under one roof. Yeah.
Oh my God. What did you do for that?
We went down to Wexford for the weekend. Some of my nieces and nephews came. All of my siblings were there. My mum and dad. We had millions of birthday cakes, had a few drinks, dinners out and stuff. It was just lovely. Really relaxed. It was fab.
And then tell me about your mum as you're growing up then.
So Mammy was a softie. I can't say I was ever really mad at me. I think she used up all of her discipline and mammy-ishness when the rest of the lads were younger. So I definitely got softer treatment anyway. But no, Mammy would never really get mad. Always on the go. Mammy, since she was a child, was out playing sports, loved being outdoors. She would have been a bit of a tomboy growing up and played soccer with the chaps. And she was always on the go. And famously was not into the kind of girlier things like sewing or knitting or baking or whatever. She's always just been a good friend as well. You know, I had my unruly couple of years as a teenager, and I think you grow up a bit then once you hit kind of 18, 19. And then after having my daughter, Gemma, I remember coming back to her and saying, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I really appreciated more just how good of a childhood I had, and like I've never heard a bad word between my mum and dad. They might have had the odd little disagreement or whatever, but the house was always calm and there was never falls out or anything like that. So I really appreciated kind of growing up, having that nice home, and that it was always happiness, you know, and nothing was ever a bother. If something was wrong, you know, you talk about it, but then we'd move on, we'd get over it, we'd handle it together. Like, and there is definitely a serious unity in the family as well. We're very close. And I think all that's down to mum and dad as well.
And the rearing they gave you?
Yeah. Like with 6 of us, you have different personalities. But we all love like a little bit of a sneer or whatever. There's always crack, there's always laughing. Yeah, and that's probably like my biggest takeaway from my childhood would be the memory of like getting together, and everybody always enjoys everybody's company, and there's a bit of slagging and catching up and chatting and whatever. Yeah, I suppose I'm lucky. I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah. How many grandchildren has you got?
15. My brother's is the youngest. Aiden is just gone 1. And then the eldest, Philip, is only 2 years younger than me. So he's turning 32 this year. So he was more like my brother really when we were growing up, because he was so much closer in age to me. We always palled around together, and still even now I kind of count him nearly more as a sibling than as a nephew. But yeah, no, and it's nice. You have that closeness as well. All the grandkids are great. They love coming to see Nanny and Granddad. And it's one of those homes, like, you know, the way you say, Mammy says no, so I'll go to Grandma. You know, Mammy'd have the box of chocolates and the sweets and selection boxes and bags of potatoes and fizzy drinks, and just loved spoiling all the kids as well.
And then, like, at what age did you start to see a difference in her?
So about 5 years ago, we started noticing bits and bobs that were kind of out of the ordinary. I suppose anybody can go to the shops and forget their purse, but this was becoming more regular. And it was little things like that. She'd go to the credit union and forget the book to make lodgements. She'd maybe couldn't find the car keys for a couple of days, things like that. They ran their own business for the last 30-something odd years from home. And it became apparent after a little while that she was starting to struggle with the bookkeeping. Things like that were going a little bit astray. I suppose the first real indicator, nothing said dementia to us in the start. The first real indicator was she was out for a spin one day and her eyesight went pretty much 50% in her left eye. So she kind of refused to go to the doctor, refused to go to the hospital, but it happened again. And there was a lot of confusion. She couldn't think of the words for the oven. She was trying to ask my sister for about half an hour, did she want dinner? But she couldn't get the words out. Both of my sisters would have a background in healthcare as carers or healthcare assistants. So the girls were worried and did make her go to her own doctor. And it turns out she'd had a couple of mini strokes, TIAs. And that was kind of how it was first presenting, and tied in then with those other little symptoms like forgetfulness and losing things and whatever. We started chatting amongst us 3 girls in the family. There's 3 boys, 3 girls. We started chatting about all these things. And I think we all kind of had individually come to the realization there was something more going on in the background. So those little symptoms were going on for about a year, and this time 4 years ago, my sisters went in and had a chat with Mam's GP just about the things that were niggling at us.
What were the things that were niggling at you?
Well, everything was getting a little bit worse. So, like, Mam has always been amazing at doing maths in her head. She'd have it done quicker than you'd have it done on a calculator. She couldn't make up bills and she couldn't make up change for people in the store. I think that was the first kind of thing. And I remember the milk lady calling one day. She used to call on a Saturday for her with her invoice. And Mam handed her the whole lot of their cash float. And she said, you work a way out of that. Do you know, and it was just so out of the realm of normality. Like, when would you ever hand a till to somebody and say you work away? Now, thank God, our milk lady's a pet. And she spoke to us separately and kind of said, you know, I'm a little bit worried. That was so out of the norm. So yeah, I think that was the big thing, because Mammy would have always been so on the ball with money and with calculations and stuff like that.
Was your dad noticing it because he was working so close with her, or?
I suppose Dad being closer to retirement and being so well-minded by Mammy over the years, Daddy had kind of stepped back a little bit. And yeah, he would have noticed little bits and bobs. Like if she said she was going to Thomastown to get her shopping, she could have ended up going to Venice Bridge. So he was kind of remarking to us quietly, you know, it's a bit out of form, or it's a bit out of sort, or whatever. But then I suppose he was kind of scared. If you say it, you have to, it's real, you know, and you have to do more digging. And sometimes you don't always like what you find out then as well. So yeah, so it was myself and my two sisters more so that chatted about it. And the two eldest girls went in and had a chat with Mammy's GP, and she kind of set the ball rolling to get a couple of tests and stuff done for Mam. My sister had worked in the local nursing home and convalescent home. So she had a couple of people that she'd been kind of inquiring with as well, who work in the dementia side of things. And yeah, everything was kind of ticking boxes. So we had a fair idea. Mam went down and had like a memory test, and initially scored fairly well, but then subsequently the scores would have dropped. So like they do little memory tests or whatever, they might give you 3 items, and in maybe 10 minutes time, we'll go back and ask you to name the 3 again. So she might get 1, she might get all 3, depending on how good she was on that day.
And Kizzy, did you and your sisters explain this to your mum, that she was going in for these tests, or how did that work?
Yeah, we kind of had a little chat and just said to her like that her doctor would feel happier if Mammy had a couple of these tests done. I suppose we didn't have a big kind of conversation about where this was going possibly.
Were you putting it down to the stroke?
Yeah, that it could be all kind of little side effects from the mini strokes. Maybe that's what it was. Nobody really wanted to look at the word dementia. Nobody really wanted to take that in as being a possibility. So yeah, then after a little while, Mam ended up in hospital with an obstruction to her bowel. She would have had bowel issues over the years. Probably 25, 30 years ago, she had keyhole surgery, and unfortunately they perforated her bowel during the surgery. So Mammy at this stage of her life probably would have suffered with her bowel anyway. But it just seemed to be a really big issue. She got like an obstruction and ended up delirious. So there was blue dogs, there was people fighting in the army outside the hospital window. Everything was kind of scary, a lot of hallucinations. So we had a chat with the psychiatrist in the hospital then, and they spoke to us about dementia more and put a name to it. They said, your mom has Lewy body dementia. So didn't really know much about it. Like we had all kind of knew a little bit about dementia. My sister was more so than me, but you know, we were on Google and trying to find out all the facts and whatever. Lewy body is a funny one. Most dementias can't be properly diagnosed while the person is still alive. It's only afterwards in like post-mortem, because there's like 70 different types and a lot of them have overlapping symptoms. But with Lewy body, the big thing is you get hallucinations. Yeah, so that's what made them pinpoint that it was Lewy body. So what we were seeing when Mammy was sick with her bowel was like a delirium. It was like her dementia going from mild to severe for a couple of days until they got that back under control. Like can often happen when an older person has an infection, you know, they get a little bit of delirium or a bit of manicness or whatever. But yeah, so that's when they confirmed what type of dementia it was. So her doctor had said previously, it is definitely the start of dementia. But but kind of sent us on our way at that stage because, there's nothing really to be done for it. She was fine. She was still able to drive. She was still doing deliveries for their business and stuff like that. Yeah, initially there wasn't really a bother on her. I never felt that she was at risk, driving or being out and about. She's very capable. She was cooking dinners as usual, doing whatever housework and bits and bobs. It was only like a mild forgetfulness in the start. And then 2 years ago, she ended up in hospital, and that's when they said, this is Lewy body dementia. So we looked into it a bit more. It's actually what Robin Williams would have had.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not, no, dementia is nice, but this one has a lot of adverse symptoms and side effects. It can do all kinds of crazy things. It can affect your bowel. It can tell your bowel, to work as normal, and then all of a sudden it'll tell it to stop working for a couple of weeks. So you get obstructions, you get constipation, and that sends everything out the window as well. You then have an illness to treat on top of a disease. So yeah, it makes life a lot harder. In the last while, then we would have seen Mammy's dementia progress a bit. The hallucinations would have become kind of more common, but for the most part, what she was seeing were quite realistic things, like a dog, in the corner of the room, or she was seeing her brother who was passed away 7 years ago. Little things like that, but then she'd tell you, I know it's not real. I know what I'm seeing isn't really there.
Kizzy, can I ask you what it was like for you guys and your dad in the initial stages of seeing these hallucinations, having these hallucinations?
Okay, so in the start, we didn't know how to handle it. We didn't have the words. We didn't have the knowledge of how to communicate with somebody with dementia. So we'd say, no, ma'am, they're not there, or that's not real, or that couldn't possibly happen. But now, since then, we've learned that that's you go along with it. You agree. You can reassure somebody that they're not in danger, but with dementia, you're generally better off not adding to the confusion and just going with the flow. Some days were tough, Rebecca. I got really, really good at heading off into the porch for a little cry, and kind of taking a deep breath, and then I'd go back in and I'd be able to face things again. And it could be something small like Mammy not remembering my name. And I know there's 6 of us and it's easy to get confused. But it was little things like that. When I knew it wasn't just, oh God, there's 6 of you, which one is in front of me now? I knew it was, I actually can't think of your name right now. And then things had become quite repetitive. So I suppose we chat a few times every day. And you notice that she was losing more details and things like that. You'd have to go over things an awful lot. One thing that was big for Mammy when she was in her kind of mild to moderate stage was that she would fixate on things. So if she had an appointment tomorrow in the doctor's at 10 o'clock, she could be up at 5 o'clock getting ready to go, trying to wake up Daddy, getting him up and out. And, you could explain, it's not for another 6 hours. Come on, go back to bed. We'll have a rest. But 20 minutes later, Mum would be up again. I suppose it's that kind of halfway, that step between being consumed by dementia and not, that she knew she had to be ready for something. So she was extra alert and was afraid she'd miss something or do something wrong. The conscious levels stayed with Mam for a long, long time, until she took her step to severe. So I think that's why she kind of fixated on things as well. Yeah, that was hard. That was really hard because this is a grown woman. She's lived a full life. She's 70 years old. It's not my place to tell her what to do and I think I've always tried to take a really patient and gentle approach with her and make her feel that she's not wrong when she gets something wrong, when she does something wrong, that it's actually not wrong. It's okay, and that she's not afraid that she's making mistakes, or she doesn't feel that she's in the wrong. I think that was a big thing for me as well. But like that, some days you're in a better headspace to deal with it, and other days you just fall to pieces every couple of minutes. My sister lives just behind my mum and dad's house. They built up behind there, and I used to run up often in tears, and we'd have a little cry session together when something would be overwhelming. Yeah, so I'm so glad like that I have Anne is brilliant. Like, we get each other, we're on the same wavelength. I don't think I'd have coped so well if I didn't have somebody that was there with me, saw everything, understood, got the frustrations, got the sadness, was feeling it all firsthand. I think it was good that we bounced off each other then as well.
And so she was still at home, and then things start to get progressively worse, or how does it work?
They were starting to progress. Mammy's progression had been pretty slow until last August. She had another obstruction in the bowel. My sisters had brought her into accident and emergency. We had gotten away for 2 nights for a little lockdown break, myself and my husband, and had arrived a couple of hours, and my sister rang and she said, look, Mam has to go into hospital. So I said, right, we're coming home. And they just kind of looked Mammy over and they let her back out. They said, yeah, you know, she has the bowel obstruction, and they prescribed the usual like Movicol or whatever, and let her home. But she wasn't really herself. So I said to my husband, I said, look, I'm off for the week anyway. I'm going to stay in Mum and Dad's. Daddy wasn't really able to manage. He didn't know how to kind of cope with it if she was pacing an awful lot. And that's the thing with dementia as well. You do a lot of pottering. So Mammy could spend the day walking around the house, and Daddy'd be trying to follow her around to make sure she was okay and wasn't getting into any harm or whatever. But it had taken a long time even to progress to that. Like, for a long time, her symptoms were really mild. So yeah, no, it didn't really take a big jump until August. Mum came home anyway that evening from A&E, and I think we lasted 3 days, Rebecca, and we had to bring Mum back into hospital. We couldn't. We were in tears. We were like zombies. Mammy hadn't slept in going into 4 days. And my dad couldn't cope, I couldn't cope, Anne couldn't cope. She was getting really manic. She couldn't sit down for a second. She was gone really pale. She was fussing and fidgeting, which were symptoms that she had, but they were much more exacerbated. So we said, no, there's something big wrong here going on in the background. So we brought her in back into the hospital, into A&E, and they admitted her. It turned out, and this is the thing with Lewy body dementia, there are so many different medications for dementia. Lewy body, there's only a couple that will work, and they tend to work for maybe 6 months, and then one day, no, that's it. Your body is like rejecting it, turns kind of toxic. And that's what had happened with Mam. There's a tablet called quetiapine, which would help with it's like an antipsychotic. So it would help her with her hallucinations, and would also help her with sleeping as well, because that was starting to become more of a problem. So what quetiapine had done had turned toxic in her system, and it sent her heart rate soaring. It's called a long QT syndrome. It accounts for some sudden adult deaths as well. You know, when you would have heard of younger men playing sports or GA, and all of a sudden they get a massive heart attack out of nowhere. They were a fit and healthy man. It was that kind of, it can cause that kind of thing. So we found a really good doctor in A&E. He was really clued into dementia and into Mammy's type of dementia. He had her ECG done in a couple of minutes and said, no, quetiapine is the issue. So Mam ended up staying in hospital for 5 weeks then, and we were then introduced to a team called the Later Life team, who look after, they're like an all-encompassing older person service. So Mammy was assigned to the Later Life team, and there would be an OT, there would be a nurse doing a house call every couple of weeks. She had a psychiatrist, everything you can think of, a full support system, and they were just amazing. They went through an awful lot of stuff with us, spoke to us about different types of medication, and they made a huge effort to trial everything that was available that would suit Mammy's type of dementia. And they did sterling work, just amazing. And what I found really great was they really focused on the whole family as care providers as well, that you're not just taking care of the patient. It was making sure we were coping, we were okay, sending us in the right direction when we needed support or we needed information on things. They were so good. I don't know how we hadn't heard of them before that. We were trying to cope for a long time without that support system. And then when we got it, it was like a weight was lifted. It was just the best thing ever.
Do you think people
hadn't heard about it?
Yeah. Do you think people don't know about those services?
I think so. Like we had done, your standard, get on the internet, start Googling. We had done that and we found out about a great thing. It's a memory cafe. So it's people with dementia. They meet up, they have a bun, a cup of coffee, a catch up. They're meeting people who are in the same boat as them. And then the carers also go into another room and they can have a vent, have a chat, have a laugh, whatever. And it was just a brilliant group. Different weeks then they'd have like a smaller group of 6 people. Mammy really enjoyed that. So like they talk about their childhood one week and it was fantastic. But when Mammy was no longer a candidate for that, we didn't know where to go. We didn't realise that there was the later life service. So when we did link up with them, why
wouldn't she have been a candidate for it? So
I suppose because her dementia was progressing a bit, and Mammy was finding it hard because I suppose with all the hallucinations as well. What she found hard was when you'd be in a group and people would be chatting, but she'd have all these other hallucinations going on in the background. I suppose it was too hard for her to focus and to try and pick out what's really happening, what's not. And kind of get in on conversations and stuff. So yeah, she just kind of naturally came to a conclusion, with the memory cafe.
So take me back to later life.
Yeah, later life.
Yeah, later.
So we got to meet Dr. Aoife, who would be looking after Mammy. She is just so knowledgeable on all things. But with a kindness. When we met her, we just felt at ease straight away. One of these people that really gets you and really genuinely cares about your situation and trying to improve it. So Dr. Aoife offered us support. She told us that when Mam would be discharged, that she would have a nurse from the later life team who would call every couple of weeks, check in, keep an eye on the medication, see what's working, what's not working, see how Dad is doing, if he needs any help. They gave us information about home help and stuff like that. And they were brilliant. So they tried Mam on a couple of different tablets at home initially, and some would work kind of for a short time. She needed some help with sleeping and kind of anxiety as well. So, they prescribed stuff, they tried different bits and bobs, and everything. It was great because I felt they really exhausted all avenues in trying to improve her life as best they could. But generally, Mammy was kind of better without medication. She was more at ease. So yeah, but they tried all options, and just after Christmas, Mam went in to try a final one. It had to be trialed in hospital, so Mammy was to be admitted to the psychiatric unit, and even that's something. You may have a bit of a stigma about the psychiatric unit in a hospital. I think over the years they've gotten a kind of a bad rep, or people would be a bit uncomfortable. They wouldn't tell you that I've been in a psychiatric unit, but it was amazing to see what work they did in there, and that they would cater to somebody like Mammy who she didn't just need medical care, she also needed kind of, can't find the word, Rebecca.
Kindness.
Yeah, she needed kindness, and she needed to be monitored, minded, and handled nicely, if you get me. Mammy is, throughout her dementia, has been in great form, and will happily interact with the carers that she meets, and She never has a problem, with a change of setting or a change of staff or anything like that. That never really thrown her. And I think a lot of that is because the environment in the psychiatric unit was just so welcoming. It was safe. The carers are just they're so good. I definitely got the feeling that when Mammy was there, she was in safe hands. They were treating her like one of her own. It was as good a care as we would have been able to give her, if not better, because we don't have that medical background. So she went in just after Christmas for a trial of the medication. It had to be done in the psychiatric unit because they needed to monitor her heart to make sure she wouldn't have the same reaction as she had with quetiapine. And so initially Mam was okay. She was in for 4 weeks. They decided quick enough, no, this wasn't going to be an option. And Mam came home to us on the 23rd of January. And she was at home for 4 days this time. We had 4 days with no sleep. Mammy was, again, manic, delirious, couldn't settle. Her colouring in her face was terrible. She'd gone so pale. Her balance was way off. She was shuffling. And we had to ring and ask them to readmit Mammy. On the Wednesday evening, she had been fairly okay. She'd been joining in with conversations. Her sleep had been hit and miss for a couple of days. But she was part of the conversation. She was taking part in home life. And then on Thursday morning, it was like a switch had flipped. She was a completely different woman. She wasn't conscious of who was around her. She wouldn't have known the door from the kettle. Like nothing was clicking with her. Nothing was making sense. She wasn't recognizing us. She thought we were all her sister, Angela. And it was scary. It was really scary because up until that point, Mammy's progression had been so slow. I always just presumed it would continue that way. So we were really scared. We thought, oh God, is there something really wrong going on? Maybe with her heart, with her bowels, what's something not right here? So her later life nurse had been out that morning, Lisa, and she'd been so good with Mammy. She got her into bed. She tried to kind of explain to us about getting a sleep routine in place. From 6 o'clock, you'd start winding down and no phone calls after 8 o'clock, getting her ready to go off to bed at 9, settled and calm. And Lisa just had a lovely way about her. Like she settled Mam and put her at ease. And she came out and she had a chat with us and she said, do you think your Mam needs to go back in? We said, no, look, we'll manage. We'll do it between us. We'll manage. It'll be okay. Whatever this is, it'll pass in a day or two. And like Rebecca, literally 2 hours later, I had to ring Lisa and ask, can we please have a bed for Mammy? We cannot do this. Her dementia went off the wall. And at that stage, we weren't really thinking it was her dementia. We were still blaming everything else. But, excuse me, we had a conversation then a couple of weeks ago with Mam's psychiatrist. She looked for a family meeting and she said, no, she said, with your Mam's type of dementia, she said she's only seen it a handful of times, but sometimes a part of the brain just dies. And rapidly, Mam's dementia had went from being moderate to being severe. And that was it. There's no coming back. Because throughout the rest of Mammy's progression, she'd take 2 steps forward in progression and then she'd come back a step. So we were there was many good days as well as bad days. It wasn't all, you couldn't be sure that tomorrow would be a worse day than today. It might be a better day. But to be all of a sudden overnight, Mam's dementia had taken a nosedive. It was just so hard to believe that this is where we are now. We were still getting the house ready for Mam to come home. We'd bought fire guard, we'd bought a medicine cabinet with a lock. We'd done loads of bits and bobs around Mam and Dad's house to get it ready so that Mammy could wander as she liked around the house. She would have a path for pottering around. There was no danger she could come to. When I say a switch flipped, she went from Wednesday night having dinner, having seconds, being in the middle of a conversation, to Thursday morning trying to set a fire in the sink in the kitchen. Just completely off the wall. She'd start a sentence and finish it with a different one, really had no idea of who was around her or where she was. It was just devastating. And it took probably the last 2 weeks to get our heads around it. You're still, not that I doubt the medical professionals, because they have been amazing, but you just don't want to believe it. Like, there's my mum, she's the kindest, sweetest person. And to think that, I'm at that age, I should be bringing her off and spoiling her, treating her on nights away, and I won't have that. It's just heartbreaking. She's always been so loving and caring, and I really try my best to be gentle with Mam. And I ring her every day, and some days are good, they're better than others. Other days she's too busy to talk. Mam, I think at the minute, reckons she's running some business or something, because she's always on the go, and she's too busy and can't chat right now or whatever. But a good day is a blessing. We've had great conversations lately. I rang her on Mother's Day. She knew who I was, because for a while lately she's thought I was Anne every time we've spoken. But she's like, Kizzy, it's great to hear from you. And I said, it's Mother's Day, and she was delighted. Oh, that's great. There'll be a bit of a fuss. And we just had a lovely conversation. But most importantly, at the end of the call, she told me she loved me. And I hadn't heard that in 2 months since Mam went in after Christmas. And it was like winning the lotto. It's those little things like that. You're grieving a part of the person while they're still there, and you're seeing them change. And like, Mammy has always been so outgoing and so active, and now she's not. She'll sit and watch telly. She'll have her dinners or whatever, and she will interact with the people who are caring for her. She shows them a lot of love and a lot of kindness. Like, I love that throughout her dementia, the best parts of Mammy's personality have always risen to the top. She moved to a new ward last week, so at the minute she's quarantining. But I was telling the nurse, you just wait until she gets out on the main wards. She will be making friends everywhere she goes. And that's just her. Yeah. I'm glad, because I know there can be some devastating side effects with dementia, like paranoia and aggression and things like that. And we've been so blessed. We've not really had any of that. But it's sad. It is so sad. See somebody you've looked up to, somebody who's been your confidant, your friend, that hug that you go for when there's something wrong, or when it's the first phone call you make when you have good news. And I don't have that, but she's still here, but I don't have that. Mm. So yeah, I'm grieving a lot of little things on and off. But then you get a day like that when you have a good phone call and you're on cloud 9. Like, the littlest things now seem like the biggest wins.
How's your dad?
He's okay. We've had to have a lot of serious conversations lately, and it's been a lot for him to take in. I said earlier, like, in my 35 years, I have never heard more than a crossword between the two of them. And he's a funny thing. Like, Daddy is quiet enough, but he was always mad about Mammy. He'd be trying to catch her hand, and Mammy was never one for big, like, PDAs, so she'd be like slapping him away, whatever. But he misses the closeness, he misses the company. They just retired coming up to 2 years ago. So, a month ago he thought they would have more years to enjoy, that they would be at home together for longer. And now, in like a blink of an eye, that's just gone. So we're minding them. We're taking turns. My sister that lives behind Mum and Dad's, she cooks for him 5 nights a week. And then I have a brother in Belgium at the minute. He's working away. He's been living away for the last few years, but the other 4 of us take a weekend each a month. And I camp out, I move in for the weekend, cook for him, clean for him. We make sure that the house is okay, but also that he has a bit of company. for as long as I can remember with Daddy, if something was wrong, he would take to the bed. One of us came home pregnant. Daddy's in bed for 3 days. Somebody's getting divorced. Daddy's in bed for 3 days. Something goes wrong. That's how Daddy copes. And like, I'm not trivializing any of the issues or whatever, but it's his way of coping. So he'll go to bed and he'll mull it over, and like he does get sick with worry. So then once he's had his couple of days in bed, he'll get up and he'll be able to deal with things and able to talk about them. And it's his coping mechanism. We all cope differently, but yeah, that's definitely his. And it works for him. So when Mam was assigned a later life nurse, they also assigned one for Daddy. And her name is Lisa, and she is a treasure. She comes out to Daddy still every week, checks on him, makes sure he's okay, that he's coping okay with everything in the last few weeks, and ensuring that he's getting out for a walk, that he's eating okay, that he's sleeping okay. It's really a holistic approach, nearly. She's so conscious of making sure that he's all right, because he's had so much to cope and deal with and to come to terms with in the last few weeks. And at the minute, we're trying to get him out of the house a bit as well, and go for walks and things like that. So I think it's good for him if he has a break, a breath of fresh air, and he can kind of process things a bit then himself as well. It's been tough. It's always been a learning curve with Mam's dementia anyway. You're learning how to react to things, how to communicate better. This just came out of the blue. So it's been a tougher pill to swallow, definitely. He's sad in himself as well. But, all we can do is be there and try and keep the best side out. And yeah.
My auntie Anne said in her podcast when she was talking about Dermot that the hardest decision was to put him in a home, but in a way that decision was taken away from you, in the sense that you had to go there, you had to, for her own protection.
Oh yeah, completely. We would not be able to manage. Mammy for years had always said that her biggest dread in life would be that she would get dementia. Now, and it doesn't run in the family or anything, but that was one thing that she was terrified of. So of course she winds up with it. But she had made us promise that she would not go to a home. I know she had seen her own grandmother live to be 96 and was in a nursing home that wasn't good. And she just wasn't like, our Granny Gibbs was a lady and she deserved the best treatment. And I know that really, really upset Mam that she didn't get sufficient kindness and care. So Mammy would have had a bit of a fear of nursing homes. So we did promise her, not on our time, you won't be going into a nursing home. But Rebecca, you have to draw the line in the sand. We can only provide love and care. We can't provide the medical side of things. And there's not enough of us. They would have needed to have maybe another 10 kids for there to be enough of us to provide round-the-clock care as well. We just can't do it. And it's sad. You kind of struggle a bit with defeat as well. But I think seeing what we have seen of Mammy's dementia and what it's like when it's severe, I think we all quickly realise that some things are out of your hands. And I would much rather her be somewhere like she is right now, where she's content and happy. She doesn't pine for home. I suppose we were afraid that she might feel like she was abandoned as well. And with COVID, because we can't get in to see her, you have that little fear in the back of your head. But every interaction we've had with Mammy since she's gone into hospital or residential care, since the end of December, she's been content. And we know she's getting the best of care, and you can hear it in her voice that she's happy where she is. So I'm glad that we have that as well. It's kind of, it's a comfort for us, I suppose, that it's not a worry that we have. She's happy where she is.
And how do you deal with days where you do feel defeatist?
Oh, I've had a couple of duvet days. I suppose that is one of the good things about COVID and not working as much as I would have beforehand. I can allow myself that little bit of time as well. There's days and you just fall from one end of the day to the next, but you have to dust it off as well. And I suppose we still have a focus, like we still have to do things for Dad and be organised for him and take care of him. It's not a job. You do it without even thinking. I look at my mum and dad and I think it's our time now to be able to look after them and repay them even a little of what they've done for us throughout our lives. So I gladly would take care of, I gladly would have taken care of Mammy forever if we were able to, but same goes for Dad. No, gladly, hand on my heart. I'd be there in a heartbeat no matter what he wants or needs, and I'm glad I'm able to repay that to him as well, that I'm able to be that support to him.
What about your sisters? Do they have days? Do you pick each other up?
Yeah, definitely. We seem to go in rotation, and the boys as well. Like, one of us will have a bad day and the other will even it out and be good. And you always have that shoulder to cry on, but as well as that, you have somebody to discuss all the abstract thoughts that are running through your head. Like a couple of weeks ago, we were in denial, and I'm saying to my sister, do you think this couldn't be real? Like that this couldn't be possible? And how is this happening as it is? And it was like such a relief to hear that she had some of the same thoughts running through her head. And, you chat them out. And
what kind of thoughts are they? Are they that this is not happening?
Oh, that this is not happening, and there has to be something else wrong with her that's causing this. Maybe she had another mini stroke, or maybe she had a full stroke or something. And then, we can't see her; she's in hospital. So yourself, when you see somebody in the flesh, it's very hard to go on somebody else's word. And I must say, the hospital have been amazing. I've rung every day, twice a day. I was the designated caller. My dad has quite bad hearing, so he asked me to ring so I could relay all the information for him and for the rest of the lads as well. So I'd ring every morning and afternoon, and they're great for updates to tell you exactly how Mammy is, how she's feeling, if she was a bit tearful, or if she'd eaten well or slept well or whatever. So they were really good for updating us. But when you can't physically see somebody, you can't take anybody at their word. So it's very easy to doubt what's really going on. And I suppose it's just very hard to come to terms with that. Well, this is it. There's no more tablets to try. There's no coming back from this. This isn't going to get better. It's only going to get worse. And I knew from the get-go dementia was a terminal illness, but now we're getting closer to an end stage. I'm kind of nearly being more of an ostrich. I want to stick my head in the sand a lot more. I want to ignore, some of the stuff that's going on, or you don't really want to believe it. I dealt much better with that stuff in the start. I suppose we had a focus. We were doing things for Mum and Dad. We were getting things ready for them. We were changing bits with the house. You were organising, the trip to the solicitor to speak about living will, or things like that, getting everything in order, so that there would be no stress later on in this whole process. But now we don't have so much of a focus. So I suppose it's harder to let these little thoughts creep in. Are
you looking for a glimmer of hope?
Sorry.
Are you looking for a glimmer of hopes?
Yeah, definitely. You're definitely looking for a glimmer of hope. It's not her, I suppose out of greed, you'd want to keep your parents forever. You never want to let them go, whether it's sudden or whether it's a longer illness. But I just wish things could be different. And you're always kind of looking for a miracle or whatever. But with dementia, there's no miracle, there's no fix, there's no cure. And that has been hard to reconcile. Definitely.
And how do you explain it to the babbies in the grandbabbies in the house? Where's Nanny?
you know what? The younger ones have they're kind of okay with it. Nanny's in hospital and that's all right. My kids are 12 and 15, so they have a better understanding. They lost their aunt 6 months ago. They lost their granddad in 2014. So they have had a bit of a loss and grief already. It meant I could explain things, I suppose, a bit better because they have a better understanding and they're of an age where they can kind of process it a bit better. It's been difficult. When Gemma was born, I lived at home with Mum and Dad. I was only 19 when Gemma was born. So like she was doted on until I moved out and myself and Shane finally got our stuff together and rented and became real adults. But Gemma and Mammy had this amazing bond. Like they would be baking. Mammy would be telling her stories. She was always on sleepovers in Mum and Dad's even years later. Like, but just so close, they're thick as thieves. And I'm conscious that Gemma is losing probably one of the most special connections in her life. It's tough. She's a bit hesitant at the minute. She went up, she stayed with them for 3 weeks in the start of lockdown. She wanted to mind them and help with the cooking and stuff like that. So she spent 3 weeks up there. And at the time, I know it made her quite sad because she could see more firsthand of how Mammy's dementia was progressing. But now she looks back on it fondly because Mammy has taken such a jump with her dementia. I think Gemma really appreciates the time she had up there a year ago, and it's going to be tough no matter what way you look at it. That's a huge connection.
Because that's hard, because I used to go to my aunt's house because my granny had dementia, and I used to go to her house when I was a teenager. And I still remember those days, and those days are it's a sadness, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a grief, isn't it? It definitely is. I know Gemma at the minute is quite hesitant to speak to Mum on the phone. I suppose she's afraid that maybe Mammy won't know her name or won't recognise her voice, and she's trying to spare herself that upset. But you know, I'm of the opinion you make hay when the sun shines. So when Mammy's having a good day, I try to get everybody to say hello to her as well. You have to grasp those little moments when you can, definitely. James is quieter. He internalizes a lot, and he's only 12 and he's a boy. So it's a different thought process for him altogether. But we've had some good chats, and I'll sneak up to his room and, you know, we'll cuddle up and we'll kind of put the world to rights a bit as well. I suppose no matter how prepared you think you're going to be, I know like we'll fall asunder when the inevitable happens. But yeah, I don't want to hide anything from them. I want to be quite honest with them. They may not be able to see my mum at the minute, but I hope they will get to see her again. You know, things are just so uncertain with lockdown at the minute as well. And then we have to wait and try and get mum into a nursing home as well. So depending on how long all these things will take, and, you know, there's an end point to dementia as well. The general prognosis for our life expectancy with Lewy body would be about 7 years. We're 5 years in. You know, time is not on our side. So I am conscious of that as well.
What is the inevitable? What happens next with the body? And if you don't mind talking about that, Kizzy.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I've done so much reading on it. I'm a mine of Google information. So with the dementia, eventually your brain stops working. It means that your organs will stop working as well. So if Mum didn't pass away from something sudden like a stroke or a heart attack, her dementia will eventually progress to the stage that her lungs won't breathe, her digestion system won't work, her renal system won't work, her heart will stop working. The body just shuts down. slowly over time. The first big indicator from what I've gathered is a loss of appetite, or, as you're coming to an end stage, the person will stop eating altogether.
They lose their swallow, isn't it? Because Paul's granddad, he lost his swallow, and that was a big thing for his family, I think.
Yeah. You're reverting, I suppose, back. Mammy at the minute would be like a young child in her mind frame. She's excited to hear from us. Everything is upbeat. When you have a little toddler at home and they're excited by everything in the world, it's that kind of a feeling. It's quite similar. But yeah, one day the body will just stop working. And yeah.
What's your hopes for your mum with the illness?
Out of a kindness to Mam, I would hope that her dementia journey will not be a long one. It's tough. I would hope, I do in my heart, I think she knows how much she's loved. I would hope that would continue. I hope that the contentness that she feels at the minute will continue as well, that she will never have a day of fear or nasty hallucinations or paranoia. Nobody survives life unscathed, but I'm hoping she avoids some of the nastier side effects or nastier symptoms of dementia. It's not a good illness, but all you can do is hope for the best. And she deserves it. She so deserves. She definitely does not deserve dementia. It's been a tough card to be dealt. Mammy's always been so good and kind and giving of herself and giving of her time. It doesn't seem fair. And often, I've said to my sisters, often I get a sense of unfairness. Like, why my mom? She's so good. And I know that's it's such a childish thought to have. But when you boil down your emotions, it just feels so unfair.
Do you believe in God, Kizzy?
Sometimes, Rebecca. Sometimes. I've had this chat. We're coming up to kind of confirmation time in my house. And I've had this chat a bit lately. I find comfort from prayer. I don't find comfort from visiting graveyards. Don't always find it in mass. When the church was open, if something was wrong, I'd often go and light a candle. We lost my nephew coming up to 2 years ago. And that was the first place I went. And they have a lovely little kind of an alcove where you can light candles in our local abbey. And I just felt so calm. I went there and I prayed for him and lit a candle. And yeah, I did feel calmer. I'm not a regular mass attender, but I do find comfort in saying prayers at times. If you've something coming up, I'll say a quick Hail Mary or something. We would have been brought to mass every Sunday until my parents got older, and then they weren't as bothered getting up for 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Religion would have always been in our life in some way, but there was no strictness to it. I think my mum and dad would be quite easygoing in that regard. Your faith is your own. But she definitely would deserve the best seat up in heaven if it is there. I'm sure her brother is up there keeping it warm for her. But yeah, sometimes I do. And I think my mom did. So for her, I would love if there was a heaven and that she'd be reunited with all of her loved ones. Yeah, I think it's something I will be finding more comfort in as well for the darker days, definitely. And I think out of respect as well, my mum would have had her own questions with religion over the years, and she went back to college and did a theology night course because she had questions, and she really disagreed with how women had to be churched after having a baby, and how badly women were treated at times by the Catholic religion. But I think she would deserve a respectful funeral, and And I think it's a huge sign of respect to sit there and pray for somebody. You're praying that they, are at peace. And I do. I would actually put quite a lot of onus and quite a lot of weight on prayer and the whole tradition of a funeral. I think it's very important, sign of respect, and you're giving the person the dignity they deserve as well.
So what happens next now for your mum? So she's in the hospital and then you now have to start looking for a home, is it?
Yeah. So we had the chat with my dad a couple of weeks ago about nursing homes, and straight away he said St. Columba's in Thomastown. It's where his mum was looked after for her last few years, and the care was amazing. And it's so close to home. It's a couple of minutes from home. So I think he would love to have her that close. But there's a waiting list like in any nursing home. So, it's dependent on that. At the minute, she's just been moved to a different hospital. It's still part of our local general hospital, but it's a dementia exclusive ward. So she has about another week's quarantine left there until she goes back onto a full standard ward. And everybody there has dementia, so she can potter around, she can make friends. It sounds really amazing. They have a full schedule of activities all day long. So there will be something that interests her. And Mammy loves chatting and she loves socializing. So yeah, I think this is going to be good for her. It's and that's available until Mum's place comes up. So she will be there until we have a place for her in the nursing home. And we only hear good things. So we've spoken to, other people who've had relatives who've been there, and it's reassuring that everybody has a good outlook on it, and that everybody has a good report, of how well their loved ones were treated. And it makes it less hard. We're not able to care for her, but she's getting the best possible care.
And Kizzy, can I ask you, with Alzheimer's Week this week, do you get involved in that?
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, we raised €1,000 running for the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland. Myself and my sister did 36 kilometres over a weekend. So yeah, I suppose in the last year and a bit, we've been more so running after cake than out running on the road. There's been no running or no fundraising, but I think it's so important, especially for awareness for families, to let them know if there's a local group in your county like the Later Life team. It's such an amazing thing. I would hate to think that people don't know about it. I think it's so important to get word out there that there are those supports there, and these people will guide you. They'll hold your hand through everything. And it's not just the patient. They're there to make sure mentally, emotionally, physically, you're doing okay, because they understand you can't stay caring for somebody if you're running on empty. You'll burn out. And like, they've been such a mine of information as well. They've put us in the right direction so many times. They've told us where to look for information about Mammy's disease, how to go about applying for a nursing home place, all of that stuff. And nothing's ever a bother. If you have a question, it's never such a thing as a silly question. They're always there and they're on call to help. So like, if my mum's later in life nurse was out, we'd often give her a text and see, how did you find her today? And they're honest, they're open, they're approachable. It's so important to know that there is that support out there. And I don't think a lot of people know.
Is it a nationwide scheme?
It's something I had meant to look into more before I spoke to you, but I know it's running in Kilkenny anyway. So I assume it is running in other counties as well. I found the Alzheimer's and Dementia Facebook support group really good as well for information. And I see other people talking of similar services around Dublin as well. So like, I would presume the Later Life team, it might go by a different name in a different county, but that those supports are there for everybody. Word of mouth is great though. I've spoken to 2 different girls lately who have had a parent with a diagnosis, and I was able to pass on information. And it's knowing that somebody else is in your shoes as well, not that you would ever wish it on anybody. But they now know if they're having a bad day, I'm only like a text away. Any questions that they have, if I can help, I'm so keen to help, because I feel that this information is so important to be shared. If it stops somebody from having a bad day, or if it helps them get information that they need or get support that they need, it's an important thing. We have to look out for one another. And with COVID as well, I suppose people are more aware of being empathetic, and we're all in a bad situation. So yeah, no, I think it's important to be able to reach out to people as well and say, look, I heard about this. It might help you. Here's the number, here's the information, and yeah, gives them somewhere to go. You definitely feel like you're swimming against the river and you're out on your own. Definitely. Yeah.
That's tough. That's sad.
It is. It's tough, like, because you feel a bit lost at times, I suppose, that you don't know what's next. You're kind of, with dementia, it's so hard to tell how it's going to progress as well. You can never kind of forecast the run of somebody's progression. So you're trying to kind of be as informed on so many different scenarios that may or may not happen.
Kizzy, what advice would you give someone who has a worry or is seeing little things in their parents or a loved one?
Definitely talk to other people within the family, somebody who knows your loved one, or who would be around them enough, and, kind of compare notes a little bit, see if anybody else has picked up on anything. Definitely talk to the GP, because they'll set you on the right track. With Mam's GP, she kind of assessed Mam when she was in the next time in front of her for whatever appointment. And she decided herself then, okay, we'll do some of the kind of initial inquiry testing and see if we're all on the same page, see if there is a query for dementia. So GP is brilliant. There's loads of support groups out there. Facebook has loads of different dementia and Alzheimer's groups where you can ask questions, and any worries or anything that you have. People are brilliant. They'll tell you what their findings are, what they've kind of gone through as well with their own loved one. But definitely, if there is a later life team, if you do have a loved one with dementia or Alzheimer's, definitely look for that support team in your area. And it will be the best thing you ever do, because it's immeasurable, the help that they give.
And Kizzy, I just, it's so hard listening to your story. I just don't even know where I'd even begin with it, because you just have been robbed. You've been robbed of your poor mammy,
Yeah.
And you're
for sure.
Even your dad, like your poor daddy. It's hard, and I didn't know you were going through this until we had a conversation, and I got an opportunity to ask you how you were, because I think in this pandemic we haven't spoken. People haven't spoken, so I know you don't want pity, and I know, but I'm just so sorry you're going through this, and I'll put your mammy in my prayers and your daddy in my prayers, because I'm a firm believer in the power of prayer as well, and I'm just thinking of you so much. I really am.
Thanks so much, Rebecca. It means a lot. And I know people say, I wish I could do something, or I don't know what to say, or I'm sorry, or whatever. But hearing that, knowing that somebody genuinely feels for you, that in itself is, it's heartwarming. It does lift you up, definitely. And I think as well, it's important to talk about. It's important to be open about it as well. it is a struggle and it is tough. And there's some days that I don't want to get up out of bed and face the world because it's just so unfair. But I also thought it's important to talk about. I didn't know, thank God, did not know anything about dementia until it landed at my door. And yeah, I think it's important to be open about it, start a conversation on it. It's not something I thought I'd have to deal with in my 30s, but here we are. So, you know, it's better out than in. It's definitely better to speak about it.
And Kizzy, can I ask you how Shane is? How is he?
He's great. He's been so good. Like, he is mad about my mum. They have a really great connection. He's upset. Like, Shane has always been so easygoing and he's like my mum. He's a gallery. He'll always knock crack out of him. And that was his and my mum's relationship as well. He'd be telling her jokes and they'd be inappropriate. She'd be trying not to laugh, but she'd be busting herself. And they were always having the crack and always having a laugh. He's a good support. He knows when to leave me alone. He knows when to throw an arm around me. He knows when to ask me if I'm okay. He listens to me on the bad days, the good days, everything. I'd be lost without him. I couldn't cope without him. And he has been so good for the last couple of years. When I couldn't deal with Anton in our house, when my focus needed to be my mum, I could drop everything. And I knew the kids were fed. They were clean. They were attending school. They were washed. Everything was like perfectly taken care of. And to not have to worry about that. I don't know how people juggle. Like, I am so lucky. I have Shane. I appreciate him so much. I always did anyway, but he has just been a superstar the last few years.
You're very lucky to have him.
Definitely.
We won't tell him we said that, though, hey? You're so good to sit down with me, and I say that to everyone, but like, you really are so good, especially with the week that's in it, just to raise awareness and just to help. And I know this episode will help a lot of people. And as you said, at the top of this, there's so many different types. How many types of dementias did you say?
I think now what we heard 5 years ago was there's about 70 different types. Talking to my neighbour who was a nurse years and years ago, there was maybe 2 or 3 different types. So I suppose, you know, as medicine is advancing and stuff, they're finding out more about it. But yeah, about 70 different types. You have the ones that are caused by strokes, which are like your vascular dementia and stuff like that. But Mam's type is Lewy body. It's plaques start to build up on your brain and stop it from functioning properly. So I suppose like the way an artery would get clogged or a vein, it's same kind of thing going on in the brain. So it shuts down different thought processes and different capabilities then bit by bit.
It's a horrible, cruel disease, isn't it? So
cruel. It's just that the person is being robbed of different bits of their life every day, and you never know what's going to go next.
And I just hope that she gets, as you said, that she's content. There's no fear, you know, and I just hope that continues for the rest of our life. And I just, as I said, I'll just keep you in my prayers, honey. That's all I can do for you. It's just,
thanks so much, Rebecca.
You know, I'm here for you anytime. I know I'm in Dublin, but you know what? I just can't wait to be able to get into the car and drive down to you and just put my arm around you and all the girls, you know, because I miss you all so much.
I know. A bit of normality would be lovely, won't it?
It will be. Kizzy, thank you so much for sitting with me tonight. I know that it's not an easy subject for you to talk about, but I'm sure that this episode, as I said, will help a lot of people. Thanks a million, Kizzy.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Bye.
Bye.